Everybody good to go? We'll now reconvene the open meeting. I'd like to welcome our guests in the gallery tonight. Thank you for coming. We'd also like to acknowledge that this council meeting has been held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, February 5th, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes, please? Minutes of the public hearing of Monday, January 22, 2024, and the minutes of the regular meeting of Monday, January 22, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We'll go right into bylaws tonight. The first bylaw for consideration is from Engineering Development Services Department regarding water and sanitary sewer South Hill Local Area Service Establishment bylaw. I'll ask staff to provide an outlook on, or pardon me, an update on this. And what do we got? Curtis and Mike? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Price and Council. The petition for this water and sanitary sewer South Hill Local Area Service closed on January 22nd. The city received 22 valid petitions out of 27 properties, and given the assessed value, that's approximately 81 and 83% no's. Therefore, council cannot move forward with the bylaws. So we're bringing that forward tonight to receive the certificate of sufficiency and defeat the establishment bylaw and the loan authorization bylaw.
Thank you, Curtis. Put a motion on the floor, then we'll have some discussion. Can I get a motion that council receive the certificate of sufficiency from the corporate officer? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Curtis, just curious, was there any yes votes handed in, or was there just no votes, or just not no votes? Yeah. This is what I'm asking.
Councillor Peabody through the mayor. All of the votes that were submitted were no's. The 22 out of the 27. There were no positive feedback received from the city in terms of no positive votes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Secondly, that council, can I get a motion that council defeat water and sanitary sewer South Hill Local Area Service Establishment bylaw number 4105/2023. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And thirdly, get a motion that council defeat loan authorization bylaw, water and sewer, sanitary sewer South Hill Local Area Service number 4106/2023. Mover, please. Councillor Bissett, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Having trouble with my mouth tonight. Yeah, just a comment on that. Staff, thank you so much. The format in this, and we know it was controversial going in. The open house I felt was good. We had an exceptional turnout of the residents. They were very well represented. I felt that the presentation put forward by staff, and Curtis undertook the presentation, answered probably 90% of their questions right off the top. So thank you for that, Curtis. And, certainly I believe that, council's talked about, we all agree, we take something from that meeting for sure. We learned something as well, maybe going forward. We do a little bit different wording. So I'm extremely happy with how that went. The interaction between the residents, was it was good interaction. Certainly, you know, there was emotion there, and that's what those open houses are for. You know what? They've got something to say, come and say it, and you know, staff were not without an answer. So thank you for that. And I think just kind of going forward, just, you know, for the record that, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Curtis, that there were some residents in attendance that wanted to vote yes. So they obviously felt, you know, the mood of the attendees at the meeting. It was pretty evident that it was going to be an overwhelming no. So, you know, and they're all neighbors up there. They get along well. So there are some people that probably do want some services there. And obviously they can't afford, you know, the plan that was presented. But, you know, we've acknowledged that if there's something we can do on a one-off, one-on-one, or even if there's a small group, the city's interested in having those discussions and working with them if it's attainable. Fair? Yeah. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say on that is, you know, before the open house, you know, I think every councillor was phoned or emailed or whatever numerous times, you know, and with the frustrations. Unfortunately, you know, to be democratic and to be totally transparent, you got to follow process. And that's what this was. This was nothing any different than any other community had to do. We just followed the process. Had we not followed this process, you know what? You're actually doing a slight to the people that were maybe having the yes, that would have voted yes. So, you know, which side are you sliding? So all you do is say, we got the request. It was a lot of work, and there was a tremendous amount of work on our staff side. But you know what? We followed the process, and the process stood the test. You know, it proved that, you know, the majority didn't want it, and overwhelmingly so. Thank you. Next bylaw for consideration is from Finance Department and is the adoption of our 5-year plan. Now we have CFO Osborne with us tonight. She's smiling ear to ear. She will be leaving for vacation at the end of the week.
Thank you, Mayor. And they found my tag, so very happy about that. So tonight we are bringing back the 5-year financial plan, 24 through 28, for adoption. It received 3 readings at the last council meeting.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that council adopt the 5-year financial plan 2024 to 2028, bylaw number 4136, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Blissett. Discussion? Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, I'm opposed to this 5-year financial plan. People are hurting in our community. Businesses are struggling and even closing. I think we have to be cognizant of that and what this does to people. I know that with the state of everything, inflation, taxes, property taxes, everything is going up, and people are choosing between heat and food. And those are tough positions to be in. And I don't feel like putting this much of a burden on our residents is prudent at this time. We're seeing record number of people using the food bank in Cranbrook, and we're seeing people who used to donate to the food bank now using the food bank. So I think we need to be very cognizant of our moves and what we're doing with property taxes in the future.
Thank you for your comments. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? We have one opposed. The motion is carried with Councillor Graham opposed. The next bylaw is also from our Finance Department regarding the 2024 revenue application borrowing bylaw. I'll ask staff to speak to the bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw sets up a bit of a line of credit with the bank that allows us to access excess funds until the 2024 taxes have been collected. We haven't made use of it in a long time. but it is, we have a lot of large projects on the go. We have been spending a lot of money, and so it is a kind of a safe measure to put this in place. And if we were to access the money would have to be repaid once the taxes are collected.
Thank you, Charlotte. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to the 2024 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 4137, 2024, as presented? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, just quickly, it's standard practice at all levels of government this time of year to get some revenue so you can keep operations going until tax revenue comes in. Not unique to Cranbrook municipal government either.
Yep. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just wondering for clarification and just reading the bylaw, how come this can't be done like on a once per council, like once every 4 years? Why does it come forward every year? Or is there a way that it could be just, you know, maybe a different council doesn't want to do this, but it could be in for like a 4-year window rather than year by year?
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, I believe there are annual bylaws that have to be passed, but we'll certainly look into that and see if we can't streamline that a little bit. I believe it's an annual requirement because it's based on tax receipts for that particular year. But I can't quote chapter and verse, so I will look into that and provide a response.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to the 2024 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 4137, 2024 as presented? Mover, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That's carried unanimously. And thirdly, can I get a motion that council give third reading to the 2024 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 4137, 2024 as presented? Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you, Charlotte. Moving into new business. The first item of new business is a report from the fire department regarding a 2024 UBCM grant. I'll ask Acting Chief Dan McKinnon to review the report for council, please. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor Price. Through the UBCM and the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, on the RDEK is asking us to help recommend the funding application. The money is going to go towards improvement in two-way radios or short way radios, to digitization of some of their documents that they have, improve laptops and stuff like that for better computers. And probably the best part is that they're actually going to bring some training in, which would benefit our department as well. Yeah, so they're just asking for you guys to recommend to accept going with the grant funding and go from there.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Can I get a motion that the RDEK be authorized to submit a joint application on behalf of the city of Cranbrook to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund to fund the 2024 UBCM EOC Equipment and Training Grant, and further, that should the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application be successful, the regional district be authorized to receive and manage the funds and to provide overall grant management for this project. Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks, Dan. Next report is from our engineering department regarding a development variance request. I'll ask staff to help give us a report on this, please.
Price and council. We received a development permit, development variance permit for from New Dawn Developments as an agent for the property owners at Southwood Heights Developments. They're requesting a variance to the subdivision servicing level. This is pre-subdivision, but they are looking to start development early on the parcel of land. So they would like to build a hydro pole. Right now they are service level 1, which means they have to have underground utility for electricity. They are looking to vary it to service level 2 to temporarily install a hydro pole to connect to the existing power across 4th Avenue, I believe. And yeah, and that's essentially what they're trying to do. The subdivision, they would be building one show home, which would be within the zoning of what it's currently zoned. It wouldn't be outside of the setbacks of what's required currently. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor. Can I get a motion that council approve the application for development variance permits to vary section 2.0.4 of Schedule A, Service Level 1 of the Subdivision Development Servicing Bylaw to enable use of a hydroelectric pole and overhead power line on the west side of 4th Avenue South to service a proposed dwelling to be located on Lot A, District Lot 3912, Kootenai District Plan 17312, Accept Plan NEP 88229, PID 005-720-788. Could I get a mover, please? Councilor Blissett, Councilor Stetsky. Discussion. Councilor Stetsky.
And 2 quick questions. I assume that staff support the proposed development?
Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price. Yes, staff is on board with the development as it is. Curtis can also, I would defer to him to respond as well as he sees fit, but through discussions, we've been supportive of the development.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might have a quick supplementary. Is this unusual? Like, I don't see there any problem with it at all, but I'm just wondering, does this happen with other proposals?
Councillor Setsky through the mayor, it is unusual in a sense, but it really comes down to the timing of the construction and when BC Hydro will pull the power lines underground. BC Hydro won't pull the underground electrical cables until the road's completely built, but New Dawn wants to start on the house prior to that being complete. So it's just a real temporary thing in the phase of construction.
Thanks, Curtis. Thank you for this. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Connor. The next report is also from our Engineering Development Services Department regarding the RDK referral on Hill Avenue. I'll ask staff to speak to this report, please. We have planning and engineering here.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a referral received from the Regional District to a request by an applicant up there to change the Rocky View OCP and the Electoral Area C South zoning bylaw to facilitate a 4-lot subdivision on wells and septic systems just outside of city limits on King Street. It's noted in the report with the map that the property directly abuts the city boundary and the city's gravel pit. And basically the recommendation, it's not even so much as a planning discussions we've had in the past, but it directly, we're talking about infrastructure and impacts on groundwater and groundwater wells. And so the resolution is a little bit more specific to identify our concerns to the regional district than it might normally have. But the premise is that, they're trying to subdivide the lots, I believe they're 0.5 hectare lots, which would all be serviced with wells and septic. And on the map provided, it shows you the proximity to this aquifer protection area that we have for the city, and also the gravel pit, and then not located on the map, but in discussion with our with the Curtis and Engineering Department and our water master plan, there is a proposed long-term water well in the vicinity in the gravel pit area. So this is within a few hundred meters of that. So it's the concern about accumulation or cumulative effect of on-site septic systems in the vicinity of city water source.
Thanks very much, Rob. Can I get a motion that council advise the RDK that the city of Cranbrook does not support the application to amend the Rocky View Official Community Plan, bylaw number 2255-2010, and the Electoral Area C zoning and floodplain management bylaw number 2/2019, due to the proximity of the proposed wells and septic systems adjacent to the city's aquifer and proposed future city water well location. Mover, please. Councillor Blissett. Councillor Graham, discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I wonder if we can kind of start keeping track of these. It relates to our discussion to give $100,000 to the RDEK to support planning. And the question I had about how often they listen to our recommendation. And so I think this will be a good first test. And I'd really like to hear back perhaps from Councillor Blissett or Mayor Price in terms of how the RDEK deals with this.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peabody, then Councillor Papa.
Thank you, Mayor. Rob, just curious, there's a fair number of homes adjacent to this property. I'm assuming they're on well as well.
Correct.
Are they endangering the aquifer?
I'm not an aquifer specialist by any means, but certainly when we look at the accumulation of on-site services, in particular the ones that might be old and historic, there's always a potential, I suppose, concern. As noted in the report, though, that this is an area that in my time here, even and in Curtis's, we receive calls semi-regularly from that particular area about people wanting to connect to services, which kind of leads us to believe they're maybe at one or at some point, not have adequate sewer and water. So it's just, and it even goes before my time. So this is an area that's pretty consistently, we've had those requests to the city.
Yeah.
And so, to support and perpetuate more development of that nature, presents a concern for sure from the water and sewer standpoint. But then also what might happen in the future, should those systems fail. For example, the city, it's not uncommon, it's a little bit uncommon, but it could be mandated to take those people in whether they like it or not and provide services. So it's trying to mitigate and identify those concerns.
Okay, no, thank you. And supplemental, if I may. Our discussion for the last probably 6-7 years is just how much we need housing in our area and how much of a dire need there is for that. But I just want to make sure before we vote on this one way or the other, that the risk to putting more homes in this area is not worth the gain we'll have for having more housing in our community.
Sure. I think from the staff perspective, it's certainly because the proximity to the water source, that is the concern. And the more housing you have on those types of services, certainly could create additional draw on the water system and then potential for groundwater contamination from on-site septic systems if they're not maintained or constructed properly, whether now or in the future. And so, we're talking about 3 additional lots. For example, a parcel like this, if it were to be in the city and serviceable, you could probably get 4 times that density there. So.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, I think we should rethink our ongoing rationale for why we are recommending against rural land use development. And this is a classic example. It's right on our border, adding 3 more rural properties and rejecting them based on they're going to have on-site septic and we might draw down the aquifer should we ever develop a well there. There's no science base to a malfunctioning septic system, either old or modern day, contributing to deep 300, 400 foot down aquifer contamination. If there's going to be, it's my public health development practice, I can tell you, if there's going to be malfunction, it's going to be up on the surface and it's going to be fixed to the current standards. So we live in glacial till clay soils. No septic systems are going to go down 200, 300, 400 feet and contaminate the aquifer. That's just not, so we have to rethink how we're rationalizing these referrals coming forward. You're saying that if we do put a production well there, it'll be 100 to 200 meters away from this boundary line. The standard on-site sewage disposal setbacks between a septic system and any well is 100 feet. So 100 feet versus 200 meters is a huge quantum leap, and we can't make that conclusion or even assumption that there's ever going to be potential contamination to a deep aquifer 200 meters away from 3 more modern, technically approved and supervised and used septic systems. So I suggest back to our CAO, rethink why we are making rationale decisions and recommendations for council to hear, and it has to be based on current technology, science, and approvals, not just on supposition that it's there and this is going to cause a hazard there. Mr. Mayor, there's no technical merit to either of those submissions by staff. I'm not putting it on staff. We've been using this for a long time, and we have to rethink about that. The regional district and Interior Health, who are the authorities on these things and keep track of any malfunctions or any ongoing installations, will tell you what the records of success are and and where they're located and what the issues are. It's just a non-issue, and I think we need to change that going forward. So based on that, my vote's going to be not in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Bassett?
So one of the issues that's come up at regional district repeatedly, and we face it here in Cranbrook too, is enforcement and the problems with that. So what staff have highlighted for us is a possible problem situation that, as you're saying, depends on enforcement, that it all is done correctly. Well, it's a big deal for the city of Cranbrook. These are small lots, and it's right on our border. And we're generally not in favor of very small lot development. This isn't your 2.5 hectare lots. These are what, 1.5 less? So it's pretty small, and it's right on the border. So I feel comfortable with the move to not go ahead with this development and the recommendations from staff. And it is a concern, and we know that water moves in Glacial Till a lot. Well, I mean, talk to the people at Fort Steele. And so there is contamination out there as well from a long ways away. I don't want to, I mean, it's not, I mean, truly, I feel comfortable with this recommendation, and we'll be speaking to that at the regional district.
Back to Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. And
Thank you.
my recommendation back to our CAO is, you've heard what the questions and the challenges back are about what is the public health risk, whether it's to the immediate area or to our aquifer or to a production well. Please research that with the officials, the experts, and let's get some real evidence of science before us when we have these in the future. There's some very misleading and assumptions that are being made, and we're making decisions and livelihoods, as Councillor Peabody's saying, about more potential housing, and I don't think we're following good evidence. So let's please bring that forward at some point.
Thank you. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my comments on this would be, I would be opposed to this. We just voted on a 5-year financial plan, and we need help, and creating more lots outside the city is not going to help us drive tax revenue and have people that are using streets, using facilities, everything else. So I am opposed to more density. 5-acre lots is one thing. There's a shortage of 5-acre lots. This isn't a 5-acre lot proposal. So I am fine with the motion at hand because of what we need in our city.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky?
Just wanted to add to that one of the other concerns that is in the information in front of us was concern about the potential drawdown from the aquifer. We really need to be looking hard at the aquifers all around Cranbrook, along with, of course, our Gold Creek water system, in terms of trying to protect the future of our citizens around water.
Just in my own perspective on this, in my previous work life, working for the province, I have personally been involved in incidents where wells have been contaminated due to petroleum products running off the surface into wells. I understand the glacial silt and the clay, but I can tell you there's pockets all over this area where there's creek beds that have been here for years and years and years, and you're going down hundreds of feet, and you're not into silt or clay. So, this is our recommendation, whether the regional district wants to heed it or take it under advisement. That's their business at the end of the day. So, personally, I got confidence in staff and what they bring forward to us. I'm not going to challenge staff. I'm going to accept their report for what it is. This is so preliminary, and let the regional district make that decision. I'd rather the city err on the side of caution. And thank you for doing that, because if it did get contaminated down the road, then the region say, well, the city approved it too. Okay, so, I think that, we're a really bit player in this anyways. At the end of the day, we're just going to approve. The regional district going to approve this or not. So thank you for your report. And, to me, it's erring on the side of the caution, on the side of caution and maybe protecting the city taxpayers from liability exposures further on down the road. And that's your job. Thank you. Yes, Mike.
Sorry, Mayor Price, through the council. I just want to make a couple comments. Primarily due to the discussion around working alongside the RDEK. We have reached out and expressed interest in having a more robust process to evaluate these types of applications, and they have expressed a desire to reciprocate that. Part of that is through the completion of the Rocky View OCP that they are undertaking that encompasses the area right around Cranbrook in conjunction with the completion of our own OCP. So right now the process is a little bit reactive as far as what these referrals are. And we do want to undertake some work with them that would be a little bit more proactive and prescriptive in how some of this planning works. And that does specifically include looking at the interaction of the aquifers that are mapped in this area. The RDEK has undertaken some of those studies, but they have been done on a standalone, and they haven't been done to really look at how the city's production wells would interact with the local wells around there. That is one of the larger concerns, is that if we increase the pumping or if we put in a new operating well in that area, what the impacts would be on these proposed new wells. We've had some anecdotal evidence that the increase in the use of the production well even further away in Cobham has influenced the groundwater and caused some issues with some of the local private wells that are in that area. So there is a desire to have a more proactive and informed process, especially for the landowners in this area. So if there is development that is more feasible, that we are making those informed decisions on that process, and we can get things that that do make sense. So that is something that is in the works, and in the light of the recent agreement for these planning services, I think that's something that both staff and council can engage the RDEK with to say, can we have a more robust and well-informed process?
Thank you, Mike. And I know recently I've spoke with CO Furcho, and you've mentioned it as well in a couple of meetings, about this this partnership, more of a regional management strategy between the two local governments. And I think it's probably time. This would be a nice little segue for Councillor Blissett and I to bring it in tomorrow, to make them aware of it and maybe get some action moving on it. And it's not on them or on us. The two parties have to come together. So we'll take that under advisement, and certainly Councillor Blissett and I will bring that up this week at the regional district meeting. So thank you for that. Anything further, Council? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's Councillor Popoff is opposed. Its motion is carried. Good discussion. The last report tonight is regarding the South Hill paving and alternate funding options. I'll ask for staff to review this report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Price and Council. Bringing forward this report is a follow-up to the earlier item in regards to the local area, the South Hill water and sanitary sewer local area service. There was discussion at the open house and even ongoing about different options moving forward now that the local area service has been, the process is finished. Staff, we've made 3 recommendations. However, there's many different alternatives that can be had here depending on what council wishes to move forward with. Looking at paving, we've identified 4 potential ones, but again, these aren't the only 4 that could be had too. One option is to look at paving just 12th Avenue, putting the old paved road back to the way it was previously. Second option is paving the whole 12th and around 18th and 19th Street. So do the historical gravel roads as well. The third option is to not pave anything at this point, and that may be the way forward if council wants to investigate water and sewer further. We could always bring paving back later. But that, and 4 is if council would like to upgrade to a higher standard, there is a cost to that. So I said if council wishes to look at that, we recommend talking about it. We can bring back an actual cost if council wants to go to an urban curb gutter sidewalk type of situation. In regards to the water and sanitary sewer servicing, again, multiple options that could be used. The one we've tried is the local area service. We could do a different local area service, or we could something like that. We'd explore grants. There are no grants available right now that staff are aware of, and however, we have to look at those very specifically and what are our odds of getting the grants and what else we could use the grant for. The third option is looking at our capital funding, whether it be borrowing and doing it all at once or using a small amount over a number of years. And with that, we could look at recouping some of the costs through, say, a connection fee or latecomers fee. I wouldn't recommend a latecomers fee because that's capped at 15 years, where connection fee could be ongoing until we receive all of the costs back. Another option, but I wouldn't recommend it for this, is development cost charges, just because it causes a circular loop with developers needing to put in the works. We collect the money where we have to give them credits when they actually install it, because we need to collect the money to put the work in. That may seem kind of confusing because it really is. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless we borrow it up front and use development cost charges as a cost mechanism to recoup the cost, but then we should be looking at it a cost connection fee instead, because then we don't have all the legislative requirements on a DCC bylaw. One of the options I've thrown in there is to install a fire hydrant at the intersection of 18th Street and 11th. A number of residents at the open house had requested a hydrant to help with fire coverage. Given the recent fire, it was seen that the fire department was having to tender water in, where another hydrant would be beneficial for both fighting fires and flushing the existing water main on 17A Street South, which is just capped and plugged right now, so it doesn't actually have a way to flush the water. And the sixth one, which ties in with all of it, is not as much of an option, but an alternative. We could look at an alternative area where we heard from a lot of the large owners it was really costly and difficult. We could look at just doing a smaller area of 18th and 19th Street and the few properties there, where more of the, even though we had 22 out of the 27 properties saying no, most of the perceived yeses who didn't respond, whether they just didn't respond or they were in favor, were in that upper area. Well, on the face of it, it may not be enough to pass, because I think there's 12 properties in there. People's decisions may be different depending on the different variations that come forward. The recommendations staff have given at this time are more based on providing the fire hydrants as an easy, low-cost route to both increase the water supply to the area for firefighting, but also water quality for flushing that dead-end cul-de-sac. Loop on 17A. The other resolution to pave was just under the assumption that we won't move forward with anything else at this point. Given that all of the other options other than a local area service, unless we can get a grant that kind of doesn't hurt the rest of the city, that we could use it for something else. If we go with another option, the rest of the taxpayers are going to be either footing the bill or borrowing or something to get it in place. So depending on how much council wants to impact all the rest of the other taxpayers to get services up there, that's something to take into consideration. And with that, the last resolution is just for us, for staff to monitor, and we can bring something forward if climate changes or grant comes available or something.
Thanks very much, Curtis. I'll get a motion on the floor here and we'll have some discussion. I expect there will be a bit of discussion on this. I've got three separate motions here. So the first one is, can I get a motion that council directs staff to include the paving of the gravel section of 12th Avenue South to a rural cross section in a future capital roads program? Mover, Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Peabody, discussion. Councillor Ray, Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. So Curtis, one of the items in the report was that paving this portion of the road could decrease costs in terms of grading and just gravel maintenance, the road dust control, those kinds of things. And I understand there's been feedback from folks that it would be, they'd like to have, some folks have said they'd like to have the road paved. Do you have any numbers on what those maintenance costs are ballpark for the gravel road, which would then potentially, offset the cost of paving?
Councillor Ray, through the mayor, unfortunately, I don't have those costs at this time. But it would eliminate if we paved it, it would eliminate at least usually twice application of the dust control, usually once grading it per year, if not more, then sometimes add gravel if it's needed. But I could work with Public Works to try and get those numbers for a future meeting if you'd like them.
Supplemental, yeah.
Thank you. I like that this motion includes the word future. So for me, when we're looking at this group of motions, I would like to see us consider options for gathering further data. So the petition against meant there were folks voted against that proposal. We don't exactly know why folks voted against that proposal. There could be varying reasons. For myself, I would like us to gather some more data. I'm happy to support this motion in that we're making a commitment to do this paving at some point in the future, but I think we would benefit from gathering more objective data. If we had enough time and resources, I'm at the point where I would love to see a spreadsheet with all 27 properties listed. Do you currently have well and septic? Do you have city water and sewer? Because we learned in the open house, there's quite a variety of interesting things that have happened. Do you want services from the city? And we heard clearly from some folks, no, I'm good on my well and septic. I do. And then we know there are folks who would like city services. Within that, we know there's folks who could also, might be a more cost-effective option for them. They happen to be in a position where they could connect with city services, where it might be more cost-effective for them to do that themselves rather than to be involved in a collective effort. If we could gather all that data, I would love to do that, but I guess maybe the pared down version of that. I'm wondering if we could engage in a process, and we heard again in the open house, people wanted enough time to respond. Could we give 8 weeks, 12 weeks to make sure we catch all the snowbirds, whatever, to say, hey, if you're interested in talking to the city about potentially getting on city water and sewer, you have from this date to this date to respond. We'd love to hear from you. And then I would feel more confident that we would know what the situation is for folks. So I'm happy to support paving for the future, pending, I would ask, and I'm only one of 7, so I may be a lone voice on this. I would ask for us to take another proactive step to gather more information. This is a 47-year process. And so for me, if we can just take a little more time to gather that information, I think it'll help inform our next steps in terms of things like paving.
Thank you. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm not necessarily, I'm not in favor of this motion. And the reason why is because unless it can be explained to me a bit differently, it says future capital roads program. So if we approve it, all of a sudden it'll just get paved, or would it come back and say, hey, we're going to pave this now? I just don't want to give a blank pave it this year, maybe in 3 years. I think there needs to be more of a discussion around the servicing up there. So that's what I just don't want to approve future, and then next thing you know, it gets paved, and it's like, oh, I didn't know, but you didn't have to tell me because it doesn't say here that you'd report back to council before it gets paved. So that's definitely a concern of mine, and I think that there are some ways that we might be able to work with the community up there. I don't think that they're in a, needing a road paved instantly. I think we can spend a bit of time on what we can maybe work on with services. I think there might be ways that we can look at a combination of connection fees and a local area tax plan again, but it's not these enormous amounts. Maybe the city takes on a bit of the burden and then gets it through latecomers and with some of the larger lots if they are wanting to develop. But I think there are ways that we can recoup some costs. It just might mean that we're holding it for a little bit longer than we might want to. But also, what is the benefit over time? Like, what is 20 years of taxes on one house that's hooked up? Like, what does that bring us in total revenue of taxation, as well as water and sewer and everything else? So a new house build, what does that bring back to the city, and how can we look at that window on this situation? So I think that there are some ways that we might be able to work with the residents and the city to find a solution that is palatable on both sides. It might not be everybody's excited, but yeah, we can live with this. So that is my suggestion, but also a concern on just approving this for future.
Thank you. And I'll just remind council that we've got 2 subsequent readings coming up here. The next one will be on the fire hydrant, and then the one after that will be regarding some servicing solutions. So right now we're discussing the paving option. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. So I think we already said to the area residents during the LAS procedure that we were going to pave it. So I think we're committed to paving it. The question that was was shared at the in the documentation that went out to this. Yes, no, CIO.
I'll leave it to the engineering and planning staff.
So I actually remember reading it in the
Yes.
information that went out to the homeowners.
The concept
that
was,
if it was going to be a no vote, we were going to pave it. Is that correct or not? It was just the standard that would.
Certainly, Councillor Popoff, I think going back as far as 2018 or 2019, the discussion with the residents in that area was to say we would look at paving that road at the conclusion of the consideration of the servicing. So that I don't know how prescriptive it has been communicated, but if there's desire from council to continue to look at ways to have the servicing done there, then that would mean that process hasn't been concluded as far as it being definitive that servicing is not viable through any option that the city has considered. So at that point in time, we would pay.
So I think during the LAS process, the vast majority have said, no, it's not the right time. We can't afford it. We're the developer. We can't afford that. So I think that's off the table right now. We did directly or indirectly hint that we were going to pave it. So I'm in favor of to a rural standard, and let's get it paved. And then I'll have questions later.
Interested. Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Peabody.
yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we had a letter recently from one of the residents suggesting that potentially $781,000 would be better spent being put towards water or sewer and sort of starting that process. And I see the numbers you have here are anywhere between 2 million and 4.5 million, depending which areas you might want to do. So just interested in your response. Does it make any sense to, start with 781,000 towards sewer and water, or stick with pavement? And I agree. I think we did create some expectation that there would be paving done.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor. It is an option that council could look at. One concern with that is we want to make sure or from my opinion, is we'd look at doing that fairly formal. I'd be concerned, I'm not sure how many of you may remember Pinecrest and the water main road installation that occurred up there, where the city was going to install the water main and then the residents would pave it later, but it wasn't done formally. And then the city ended up having to pave it later due to the number of issues that came up with that and complaints later on. So I would suggest being very careful with that option, because my assumption would be that the residents a number of years down the road would come and ask for it to be paved later, even though the money was put to the water and sewer. But it is an option we could explore, whether it be through a formal petition, would you agree to this? But people change, people move, it's...
Supplemental, if I might. Thank you. So we wouldn't be digging up the pavement to put in sewer and water later.
Would we be digging up the pavement to put in water and sewer later? I think it depends on the options we looked at for servicing and paving. If we paved only 12th and we decided to put service the whole area, then yes, we'd have to dig up the pavement. If we put the pavement down first and came in for water and sewer, if we paved 12th but only wanted to service the area of 18th and 19th, we may only have to do a couple minor cuts across the new asphalt versus dig it all up. So we can work around it a bit, but there may still be some new asphalt dug up across 12th to service the couple lots. But
Thanks, Curtis. CEO Virtual has a comment.
For council, I just wonder if we can reframe the conversation slightly. So I think everybody's saying the same thing. The intent was there was some expectation that should the LAS not go through, that the road at some point would get paved. There is, as Councillor Ray had raised, there is, and in the report, there is a potential that maybe something else can be done up there. And certainly staff are not going to pave and then dig it up and put the water and sewer in. So the concept is, by having this motion, the residents have some surety that, the road will get paved even if the LAS didn't go through at some point. So there's that in the future out there as a surety and just that. And now we're going to start working through, is there something we can do before that? So I think that was the concept, is just to kind of close the loop on if the LAS doesn't go through, at least the road will eventually get paved, and this format formalizes it. There's no date on it.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody, then Councillor Bassett.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear what CEO Virtual is saying. I would almost argue, though, that if we vote in favor of this, the expectation is that it's going to be done in the next year or two, where if it doesn't get done for the next 10 years, then we might get a little bit more backlash. I would argue that this gravel road services, I think, about 16 homes, is probably more drivable than some of the other streets within our municipality. And I'm kind of stressing that this is one of those cases where the greasy wheel gets the grease, where we're hearing a lot from this community, and we're being pressured to spend upwards of $700,000 to pave a road for 16 homes. I'm not going to vote in favor of this, because I feel like this money can be better spent elsewhere. And I trust what our staff are doing now with how they're prioritizing roads. And I wouldn't want to see funding from a more necessary project go towards this, because they're feeling pressure from either council or the residents in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Councillor Peabody. Councillor Bassett.
Yes, thank you. And I concur with Councillor Peabody. I don't want to see pressure from council on what roads should be paved, because we all have opinions on that. and neighbors and things like that. But also, I really think with this area, the priority is water and sewer, not the paving. So let's deal with that first. And then once some solution has been resolved, then we look at paving. That's the priority. And where I lived before, they did pave and then rip it up within a year. So it does happen, and it can happen. So I think we should leave the paving for now, deal with the water and sewer issue as a priority, however that works out, and then we'll look at paving as part of the roads program. And certainly, I would think gravel roads are a high priority, so.
Thank you, Councillor Papa.
Thank you, Mayor. What I heard from the immediate neighbors that were voting on the SAR, whatever it's called, was we want our road paved. We can't afford to pay as a developer for the water and sewer and everything else. We just want our road paved. We're tired of gravel. When can we get it paved? We did have some expectation in our wording that eventually we will pave it. So I think we need to go with that. My question to Mr. Matika is, if we do approve the first motion, will that go into our road improvement program and be prioritized within the rest of the priorities we have for our road improvement program? I agree. We do not want to be directing politically what roads need to be the first, second, and third priority. So if it goes into our road priority program, then I'm okay with passing this motion.
Councillor Popoff through the mayor. That's why this particular road is in a very unique situation when we look at it from an asset management perspective, similar to it being an outlier as far as the servicing issue is concerned. Typically, when we're looking at levels of service for roads, we take into account the service that they do need to provide, and then we look at the condition of it, and then the risk of that condition to the traveling public. So this does sort of fall into a bit of a gray area where some jurisdictions look at the life cycle of a road, and a well-maintained gravel road is cheaper in the long run than a paved road that after 5 or 10 years you start needing to sink more maintenance into for crack sealing, patching, and then you need to start putting money aside for the eventual renewal and replacement of that. So it's not something where we try to have a system in place and a process that quantifies this as much as possible. So we're making transparent and open and honest decisions about it. It's hard to make an apples to apples comparison on this one, and that's where we're engaging with council a little bit outside of the norms, because this area is a little bit outside of the norms. We have yet to establish any policies that say that the city does have a desire to have all roads paved in the city that do service the public. Some municipalities do that. But if we were to look at it exactly as it is right now, it is probably over the life cycle cheaper to grade and gravel and to do dust control on there. But that could also be said with quite a few other roads that have been paved in the community.
So supplemental tonight. So without answering my question, Mike, you answered it. So it's likely even if we pass this motion, it's going to fall into the priorities. Time is going to pass, and during that time, we're going to hear more from the 16 homeowners and vacant landowners what their change in priorities are going forward. So I think that because it's not going to be an immediate priority or a political priority, we let them know that yes, it will be paved. Not today. It'll go into the road improvement program priorities, and during that time, further conversations, as Councillor Ray was saying, and information gathering, we might find a more economically favorable time to go with full water and sewer. So I think it's a good start for passing motion number 1.
Thank you. I got a couple of questions. Curtis, was this roadway part of the LAS proposal? Is that part of the package, the proposal package?
Mayor Price, the road surface itself was not. The only cost were installing water and sewer in the local area service.
Pardon me, I did.
The only costs in the local area service were to install water and sewer. There was no cost to pave the road in that local
Okay.
area service.
So our original proposal, the city was going to cover the cost of the paving in the LAS. Okay, so that to me, you know, that's significant for certainly for the people up there. They weren't going to pay, right? That was our part of the deal. Now, it didn't go through. Certainly, it would sure be a ways to put pavement down and be digging it up somewhere down the road here. But I'm going to suggest that once we've dealt with the various property owners who, you know, want to try and see if there's a solution for the individual house or maybe a small pocket of homes there. And at the end of the day, when we're done with that, saying yes, no, whatever, no impact on 12th Avenue, that may be a time we consider this. We made an obligation as part of this LAS, you know, and I get the 100,000, but, you know, that's a throughfare that there's a secondary road really that takes you up into that area up there and in and out of that area. It's a mess, but end of the day, that was part of our deal on the LAS. I realize it was voted down, but that was the freebie that we were throwing in for them. Yeah, and I certainly think, you know, if we did pave it, and I'm not saying this year because your wording is very specific, or future road program, okay? It could align with some of the priorities that the other councilors are talking about. So, yeah. I think that once you've looked at all these other properties and the decisions made, what we can do, and nothing's going to be done on that road or little impact, and then once that's been taken care of, make no mistake, I don't think that this is coming to a council anytime soon. This whole proposal again, the only time we're going to see it is if they come up with an LAS for the whole area. You know, in the future, that's going to impact that road if we put a road down. And honest to God, it might be, what, 30 some years now? Well, it's going to be another 20 years, make no mistake, because if they can't afford to do it now, or, you know, you'll have a major developer come in, let's be honest, that's the only way, and buy everything up. I'm not suggesting that's what you want or that's what's going to happen, but you look at the dollars we're talking about here, you know, no homeowner in Cranbrook can afford that. So it's got to be big development that comes in, and that roadway's really, you know, it's insignificant in the scheme of things a number of years down the road. So, yeah. So I'm kind of inclined, I was kind of creeping away from it. I'm inclined to support this just for the fact that we did make a commitment to them up there. They've been ignored for 37 years. We heard that loud and clear. And nobody's listened. So we are listening. I think that's important. And it's in a future roads program. It'll be up to our engineering to decide based on what you feel the priorities of the city are. Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Just to provide a little additional assurance on this motion, I wonder, I can't remember now who the mover and the seconder were, if they would consider a friendly amendment at the end of the motion, you know, pending completion of exploring all potential options. Like, and I know staff's saying that we wouldn't pave it and say, oh, now we're going to do some stuff, we're going to dig it up, that you would have completed that process. So I wonder if it would be helpful to just add that to the motion to be explicit about what staff is saying.
I don't know, I guess you are engineering. I mean, when we're saying future here, so there's a lot of discretion there, and I would certainly, you're going to, future would mean once you've making sure that all these things have been taken care of, fair? Yeah. Rather than amend a motion. Yeah, you're good? Everybody's good? Any further discussion? I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's interesting. 4-3, that's carried. Opposed, Councillor Graham, Councillor Bassett, Councillor Peabody. Thank you. Good one, guys. Okay. Looking forward to more discussion. Can I get a motion that council direct staff to include the installation of a fire hydrant on 18th Street South at the intersection of 11th Avenue South in a future capital program? Mover, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Curious, for like looking at where this fire hydrant is going, and this might be maybe more of a question for Dan, I don't know, but is one fire hydrant in this area, is that enough, or should we put a second one in further down the street? Yeah, Dan, you might need to have a microphone. Just so the public can hear you. Yes, so yeah, it'd be the corner of 18th Avenue and 11th Street.
To that.
I think straight up from 11th, which is a dead end.
Mhm.
I don't even, it doesn't look like that's on a recognized roadway right now.
Oh, and this is at end of the cul-de-sac. Councillor Peabody through Mayor Price. It would definitely help in that area with the amount of hose that we have. And as Curtis was saying about flushing of the lines in that area, it would definitely could be able to cover off a lot better in those few properties that are around that area.
Okay, yeah, I think I was just making sure, like, if we're already putting in one, and is it recommended that we should add a second one, or one will be sufficient?
I'd have to look at where the next hydrant would be.
Okay,
I'm not sure off of 12th Avenue or I just have to have a look at the area.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that right now, but I can look into it.
okay, great. And supplemental, if I may.
Certainly.
So I'm guessing we would be putting a water line going up from 11th Avenue to service this fire hydrant, is that correct?
Councillor Peabody through the mayor, on the end of the cul-de-sac, but that little stretch of 18th that really goes nowhere right now, there is a water main there that just dead end and plugged. So it doesn't go anywhere. So the idea would be just to extend that to a place at that intersection that would be appropriate for the future. And it also remove the dead end plugs to allow for that flushing.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused. How come the homes in this area cannot hook up to that water main? Or could they?
Councillor Peabody through the mayor again, they could connect to it. However, our policy is that they extend it to the furthest part of their property so the next person could connect, but they could connect. So that's where for some homes, it might be less expensive to actually just do the extensions themselves and be part of a local area service or some other initiative.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. At the open house, we heard, some really good discussion about this issue. So I think this is a really positive initiative. So I wondered, Dan, if you could maybe just talk a little bit about by having a fire hydrant there, I understand it'll impact people's fire insurance and put them in a different category for fire protection. And I understand that also if a house were to burn down, that this would put people in a better position by having a fire hydrant there. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Councillor Ray through Mayor Price. Yes, having a fire hydrant there would be advantageous to the area surrounding households. Like I said earlier, if we could look at a second one, but definitely it does affect insurance rates and fire department's ability to access a large amount of water very quickly.
A couple of thoughts here. Yeah, certainly there's a few houses in that would certainly benefit from the travel distance to get the insurance premium recognition. You know, these people are in the city right now and they're not getting fully protected service, so they're getting semi-protected costs. So, you know, they're paying probably $1,000 a year more for their premium. I don't know, something like that. So that's significant for them. They're in the city limits, so we just not providing the service. You know, they pay their taxes, and I think if we can help them do that, I think secondarily, if you look, that's quite a grassy area in there, and the city's burned in there over the years several times. Just the fact that there's hydro lines that go through there. Is there not, Dan? Yeah, so there's hydro lines that go there, so that's infrastructure. So, and the reason we'd burn in there was just to ensure we're protecting that infrastructure, burn it early and where it's controlled, rather than getting a grass fire in there, and then you're gonna have your infrastructure impacted by the fire. So that hydrant would play a critical role as well there. Certainly, Curtis is saying that, if we got a line right there, well, fire hydrant is pretty cheap. We're not running 3 or 4 blocks of water main to accommodate this. If it's right there, we pop a hydrant in. I think that's almost a no-brainer personally. So, yeah. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Final motion. Can I get a motion that council directs staff to monitor the status of water and sewer service and needs in the South Hill area and bring forward alternative funding or serving solutions should favorable conditions and opportunities arise? Mover, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Popov.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So what do we mean by direct staff to monitor the status? How active and how much staff cost is going to be to monitor the status over time? What do we mean by that?
Councillor Popoff, through the mayor, we talked a little bit about the language in here. More or less, that is just being open to hearing from the community if there are changes happening to their water and sewer system. So it's not something we're going to be out there poking around and investigating. But if we do hear that there are things changing out there with failing systems or systems that are causing issues, that further allows us to consider what options we have, or further allows us to potentially look at external areas of funding when we're talking about compliance and failures of water and sewer.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess my question is, and if I understand you correctly, this is you're just dealing with failure of a system or issues around it. This is not about finding a solution that works with a proactive solution that works with the community up there. So it's going to be up to them to come back and say, hey, how can we, them or a couple people, how can we get water or sewer? So we aren't going to be doing anything. It's going to be up to the residents.
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, I think that's part of the discussion that we're having here with council tonight. This particular resolution does speak to us taking a more passive approach with understanding the engagement level that we've had with the community there and how much they are aware of generally the cost and generally what it would take to undertake this. We've heard some discussion from council tonight that there is a desire for us to do a little bit more homework on that to try to get a more comprehensive picture to rule out any of those potential options. So that's sort of why some of these resolutions were worded a little bit more openly, understanding that there has been a significant number of hours and staff resources put into this. So we're just trying to be cognizant of that there's an endless amount of options of us providing some funding, a little bit of funding, a lot of funding, all the mechanisms in the world. You can spin the wheel and there's a lot of different ways to do it. Is there a pathway through there that both council and the public and those residents are open to? Perhaps, but it's hard to define what that path would be and how many permutations there are for us to bring back to council and say, does this make sense? Can we go engage with them? So this is more, if we're hearing more from the homeowners or the property owners there, and situations do change or opinions do change, then we can be reactive and supportive. But if there is some desire from council to try to button things up with a little bit more engagement, I think that's certainly something that we can undertake. And that little bit of engagement in the short term would help us establish a more comprehensive baseline that we can then monitor from.
Thanks, Mike. Anything further? Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mike. You touched on what I spoke to earlier. I think because we've had this level of engagement, now is a really good time if we have, if we can put in a reasonable amount of just a bit additional engagement around folks to say, for me, I think, hey, we're happy to hear from people at any time, but I think if we could set a bit of a time frame and say, we'd really love to hear from you from now until now, and that will help us just have a clearer sense of where we're at. And, you know, maybe there might be some of the smaller properties that are closer together that might have kind of similar needs. Then we have a better idea of what we might be looking at. So I appreciate if in this motion, it can include a reasonable amount of proactive communication. I think it would just be, I would actually be making good use of the resources we've put in to date. We've got a little bit of momentum here. Folks are engaged. For myself, I would just like a little more clarity around the folks who are saying, yes, we would like to explore hooking up to city water and sewer. If we could include that in, you know, as part of this motion, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for that. And certainly at the open house, we did make a commitment that we would work with them. So this follows that, certainly that thought. So all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We've got a couple of admin updates tonight. First up is with Recreation and Culture Department regarding handrails in Western Financial. Trevor, got the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Handrails, Western Financial Place. So handrails, retrofitting handrails in arenas is becoming the new norm. But it's not as simple a task as going to a local manufacturer and buying something. Facilities that aren't designed for handrails, the traditional rake of the seating, so how high up each seat is behind the next one, plays a big factor in this. So it's not as straightforward. So we've been working with a local architect to help us find the right design, and in turn, a structural engineer, both McElhaney and Barry in town. And we've come up with a design that's going to benefit our patrons, both with having a handrail for walking up and down and stability, as well as not interfering with sightlines. So that's where we're at right now. We are just waiting on budget to be approved for this year. We are updating all of our quotes, and we will be able to award a contract very shortly. The expected installation is this summer, preferably during our pool shutdown when our facility is its quietest. And barring any manufacturing or product issues, getting materials in, we shouldn't have a problem meeting that deadline.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Trevor, was there money in the budget from last year before? Was there not something budgeted for the handrails? Now, obviously, you know, even if it was a year ago, it's probably not enough anymore, the way things are escalating, but was there money before, and how much was it, and what do you anticipate the new cost will be above that?
Correct, Mayor Price. So we, 2 years ago, when I first started with the city, we had $20,000 budgeted. We've used about 11 or 12,000 of that just on designing, engineering, procurement and whatnot. So last year's budget, it was raised up to $60,000, and that's where we're planning to come in at.
Okay. Councillor Pop-Up.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. Long overdue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This will go a long way to support a lot of the seniors and people with mobility issues to access Western Financial Place in the facilities. Will these rails go all the way down to the floor level?
Mayor Price through to Councillor Popoff. So the design of the handrails that were selected for Western Financial Place, each row or each set of stairs, each aisle will have 3 sections of handrails. So there'll be a break to allow people to cross over to other sides, you know, emergency access, egress, ingress, all that stuff. So a continuous line is not applicable, but the original design of having a single one kind of per stair is not, doesn't meet code as much as possible. So each aisle will have 3 full sections going all the way down. There are a couple of spots in Western Financial Place where the bottom section is too narrow. The stairs are too narrow to have a handrail in the middle of the stairs. So the only option would be to install it on one side of the stairs or the other, which would create a very uncomfortable experience for a patron sitting in those seats. So at this point, we've decided to leave out those certain sections. I believe there's 4 in the entire arena.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I think the original conversation, I know Councilor Bissett, how far back was that, 7 years ago, was we didn't necessarily need it all the way down, but at least the first, section or so the seniors and those with accessibility issues had comfort to know that they had a means to get down to their levels, maybe up at the higher levels. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and just a comment, I know every councillor has probably heard from more than one citizen, the frustration, how long it's taking, but, yeah, and the question I get, and it is usually from seniors and, old timers like myself whose knees are gone and whatnot. And well, you know what? Just get your public works guy to pound some handrails in there. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way anymore. You know what? In the 60s and 70s, that's exactly what happened. We'd have a welder and whatnot. We'd bend some pipe and throw some handrails in. The world of liability, especially on local governments, on municipalities, we cannot do that. So, and that's part of the reason this process, or this initiative is taking so long to get off the ground. So, yeah, it's not quite as simple as just, calling up our public works, Jason. Can you pound some handrails in over there? So, thank you. Next up is engineering and development services regarding water supply planning. Mike Matika will review the update tonight. Thanks, Trevor, by the way.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this administrative update is a bit of a collaborative approach, working with our colleagues at Public Works, just to really try to continue improving our communication with the public about our water supply and some of the drought challenges that we are facing, and just trying to have some more regular engagement and awareness of all the work that is being done and all the proactive planning that is being done. So with the drought conditions and challenges that we do continue to face, we just want to provide a bit of a summary of the various studies, projects, and initiatives that are underway to proactively plan for and secure the long-term sustainable water supply for the community. So as council is likely aware, in 2022, we completed a multi-year water quality and supply master plan that is available on the city's website. That included, but wasn't limited to, the following sections of water sources, water treatment, source protection plans for surface water and groundwater, water quality and supply asset management plan, and as well as capacity modeling for our reservoir. This plan did identify, several major capital upgrades that will be required to really facilitate, growth and housing in the city, as well as proactively mitigate, the impacts of climate change and more frequent drought conditions that may be experienced. I won't go into detail word for word for the rest of the report, but really what we wanted to communicate, through that plan and through previous work that the city has done, that the city does have more than adequate water license secured in Joseph and Gold Creek that would sustain city growth projections for another 35 plus years. In order to access that available water supply, the city does need to look at continuing to invest in planning a design for some capital upgrades. The primary one that we've been looking at is a new dam and reservoir in the bottom of the Gold Creek watershed, in the same location of the current dam and intake structure, as well as some other supply upgrades that would need to happen just to make sure that the capacity of the transmission lines coming from our sources to the community are sized appropriately to facilitate that continued growth and development that we are seeing. Further to that, we are updating some of our policies and procedures around developments and guidelines, not just for large subdivisions, but for smaller, development permits that relate to, landscaping protocols and just the way that the work is done and the way that development does go ahead in the city. Some of that would be around landscape practices, just, encouraging practices that minimize the need for water use and for irrigation. As we've seen through a lot of the work that we're doing is that the routine water use, the day-to-day water use that's happening within households is not the major risk to our water supply or a major contributor to the drought conditions that we are seeing. And really, it is that summer outdoor irrigation that is the primary culprit that we do need to tackle. That does include us understanding what our leaks are in the community, what all the other uses are. So when we're looking at housing and development conflicting with some of these drought things, and on the surface of it, I can see that there's certainly a concern from the public. Why are we looking at housing and adding housing and development if we are having drought issues? That isn't the case, and the household water use from new housing developments is not something that is really the prevalent factor that we're looking at. But in addition to that, with the new housing that we are looking at bringing online, there is a strong focus from staff and from council to look at infill, look at higher density, look at the type of housing and development that our housing needs assessment is asking for. And a lot of those are really low impact developments from an irrigation perspective. And a lot of those newer developments, even from the household water use, are using newer appliances, and just it's not that much of a contributing factor. So that's, just to summarize, we do have the plenty of enough water supply to accommodate the growth in housing demands that the city does need. But we are certainly working from a development standard and a policy perspective to make sure that city is doing its part comprehensively through the development landscape to make sure that, being water wise and water conscious is front of mind.
Thanks very much, Mike. Councillor Setsky has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for the public that might be tuning in that quite disturbing, but the snowpack up in the area where we get most of our water from is at 52% of normal right now. And I would be surprised at all if we end up going into level 3 restrictions, possibly right at the start of the season this year instead of the end of the season. Along with that, though, the city does need to lead by example. And so at some point, CEO Furcho, it would be great to hear what the city plans to do. I agree with some of the restrictions coming in around planning and development, but in terms of our own operations in the summer, it'd be great to hear a plan or a proposal from the city, how we're going to lead by example as we head into a summer that may, quite frankly, be very difficult from a water perspective.
Anything further, Council? Thank you. Next up, it's over to Jason from Public Works. He's going to talk about the current snowpack conditions on Moya Mountain and potential impacts.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing me some time to give you a bit of an update on the snowpack conditions. So I'm going to try and share my screen here, if possible, with Ross's help. Anyways, I'll just kind of go over. So like Councillor Stetsky said, we are looking at about a 52% snowpack of normal. So last, yeah, you can take that. Yeah, so last year was a drought year. We did see a drought in our area. Currently, we are at a level 4 drought that the province has put us in. And as the snowpack that we had last year, we were about 66% of that from last year. So like Councillor Stetsky said, we are looking at possibly entering the irrigation season in a stage 2 or a 3, just to start off the season. So that is something that we're looking at. Initial reports from our contractor that measures our flows in the creeks, we're about a 20% reduction over the last 3 years. So we are not filling up the reservoir. Currently, the Phillips Reservoir is still sitting at a -5 foot elevation. Just to talk to what the question for Councillor Stetsky for a plan, we have been talking internally with the internal stakeholders to do a lessons learned log, talking to communications, engineering, bylaw, and some of the functions at Public Works. The lessons that we learned from last year, that was the first kick of the can with our outdoor watering regulation bylaw. And so we've compiled all that, and we're still meeting internally with the operationals at functions at Public Works, where we are looking at possibly right off the bat not starting up some irrigation systems right away. We're going to focus more, depending on the conditions at the time, we will look at focusing on the major play fields like Moyer Park, Kinsman Quad Parks, the Confederation ballparks, that kind of stuff. So that's one operational. We're not going to do any UDF flushing. So that's the unidirectional flushing that our water system, through our water system, our water operators do. That's more for a water quality initiative. We're not going to be doing that this year because that is quite a bit of water that we do use, and it just doesn't make sense at this time. We're also looking at cut back on our dust control. We've kind of talked about that with the 12th Avenue there. We do typically do 2 applications on every lane in the city. We're going to look at cutting back that to 1, try and stretch it out as best we can, because when we do apply that, we do use water with the water tender to apply that. We're also going to have more dedicated leak detection this year with the water crews that aren't going to be UDF flushing. They'll be put to the task of proactively find leaks in areas that we typically have to go to through the year, and also in known areas where we know the ground is quite porous. And so those water leaks that don't surface, we'll be actively pursuing those as well. Yeah, we'll also be doing more surveillance. We're going to have some more Public Works staff orientated on the bylaw and how to collect the information for notifying people that are abusing the bylaw. And also, we do have an app, the 311 app. There's a function in that where it does give the community an opportunity to report as well, and we'll communicate that a little bit better. And one of the big things, of course, is going to be communication. I've been working with the corporate communications officer on this. And as soon as this week, we'll be starting to do way more communication to let the population, the community know. We're going to utilize the handouts, the utility bills, the tax handouts that way. So we know those go to every household in the community. So we'll be utilizing those as well. So I just want to bring your attention to the graph that's on the screen there. So the big gray area, that is pretty much the highs and lows right from 1971. So that's quite a bit of data that we got there from the Moyer Mountain. As you can see, the purple or the pink that you see there, that is the pretty much the historical average that we see, the 25 to 75% median. And last year is the green line that you see there. So we were pretty much still within that average last year. And of course, this purple line here, that's our current snow conditions. So as you can see, it is quite low. It's not the lowest that we've seen with our data collection, but it's not the best either. Just with this last precipitation that we did have, we did notice about a 20 centimeter increase up in the watershed, which is great to see. It's a drop in the bucket, really. But if we continue to have those snow events, then hopefully we can catch up. And also, as you can see, March and into April, those are our high precipitation months. So we're not, cracking the whip right now or anything like that, but we still have a little bit of time to, collect some more water up in the watersheds. But we just wanted to bring forward an update for council.
Great report, Jason. I got Councillor Blissett, then Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for the report. So last year we had a consultant provide us with a report, an assessment of our water resources and the state of affairs and what we needed to do to move forward. And then we directed staff to start looking at, bring forward a report to us on water meters, what that might look like, and I just wonder where we're at on that.
Councillor Blissett, through the mayor, we've met with our consulting team on that, and we've also met internally with staff. And I believe it's next week or within the next week or two, we have a large startup meeting, a multi-hour meeting on rolling out that project as far as analyzing all of the best options available to us for implementation. and what the investments would be, but also what the resulting benefits would be. So we have a range of options. Ideally, the target is to be able to early in the fall, to coincide with earlier in the budget cycle, to start engaging with council about decisions to be made for the 2025 budget season, as well as any policies or bylaw updates that may be impacted.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question and maybe a couple comments, kind of to stem off of what Councillor Blissett was talking about. It's great that we're looking at metering maybe for the citywide approach, but how hard would it be to put something in place on the quicker side for all new builds? Like, I know I've been talking about this for quite a few years, is, why can't new builds have a water meter put in? Like, it's part of the build process. Now it's there. Over the last few years, we've had a few hundred single family homes built that could have had meters on them. So is there a way that we can just say, hey, this is do a quick bylaw amendment, do something where the meter is now installed and for future use?
Councillor Graham, through the mayor, that's exactly one of the initiatives that we're going to be discussing at the startup meeting, and seeing, are there some very quick action items that can be undertaken? So that is one of those. There are some longer term decisions when you talk about the way that the meters are purchased, the way that they're read, the way that they work together as a system in the future build out. But there are interim measures that would, even if a meter is not installed, would require a cabinet and a location for them to be installed, such that, and that's one of the biggest issues with retrofitting. Having overseen one of these programs in another nearby municipality, is going in and cutting and finishing and doing something, whereas you could require all new builds to have a location for a meter to be behind a panel, and then we go and plop it in there when we're ready to make that decision. So that is something, and hearing from council, if there is a desire to look at making policy and bylaw changes earlier on, but still have them done in an informed manner, then we can bring those considerations forward to council for earlier implementation of an adoption if we see fit.
Perfect, thank you. And just one other maybe comment or question. So if we are looking at the way it's trending, and realistically probably starting at stage 2 or more likely stage 3, I like that we're going to do a robust communications plan, but do we have the capacity or the ability for staff to reach out to reach out to Lawn Barber, Canadian Rockies Landscape, reach out to Kootenay Landscape, and chat with these folks rather than just a little pamphlet? Because a lot of these people base their business on lawn cutting, and if they're not going to be watering, they're going to staff up and do stuff appropriately. So I think we should have those conversations with our business community way in the front so that they can plan their summer. And same with the development community. If we do have some bigger developments coming on, or maybe we look at ways to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be putting sod in. Let's look at a xeriscape kind of an idea. So just throwing that out there.
Councillor Graham, through the mayor. In discussions with the corporate communications director, that is an avenue that we're going to look at with the local landscaping companies. We're going to use our database to find out those companies, those contacts. We're going to reach out to them. We're going to have these discussions with them.
Thank you. We got Councillor Popoff, then Councillor Peabody.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to do more surveillance and communications about the stage 3, stage 4 that we're doing. Because what I heard last year, and I'm sure most have, is that neighbors don't want to think on neighbors. So even if you use the 311, they're going to be, well, it was one of the 3 of you that thinked on me, right? So good on you for that. It's also going to be a while before we get the Gold Creek Dam reservoir up and running, whether it's with or without grant money. So in the interim, I'm glad there's some other measures. Did we last year fully rely on our production wells in town, or were they intermittent at some time?
Councillor Popoff, the mayor. Last year we only had the 1 production well going. This year we will have 2 online. Of the three, the third one on Cobham, we're still experiencing some issues with the well screen on that one. So we're still doing some investigations.
Excellent, thank you. So since earlier in the agenda, we recommended against that regional district 3 lots, and we're now better protecting to the future that other potential production well. Maybe there's some merit to getting that up and running as well, while we're still waiting for the Gold Creek Reservoir to be built. Because I mean, Mike Curtis, what are we looking at for timeline to actually have that reservoir online? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 7 years?
Councillor Papa, through the mayor, that's a great question, but we're still in the process of obtaining the necessary approvals from the province. You know, if we were to have the funding in place to go and do it, the project would likely take a full 2 construction seasons, I would imagine, if not 3. And then the X factor really is the funding mechanism by which to do it. So our intention, and this was discussed at a council meeting last year as far as advocacy for external sources of funding, was to complete the approvals process and say that the city of Cranbrook has invested all of this time and resources into having something that's shovel ready, and then go and advocate to all levels of government to get the funding for that. And see what the best results are from that perspective. If those results aren't fruitful, then there's a conversation happening around the council table on the city looking at how it would fund it itself, knowing how relatively urgent that is.
Excellent, thank you. So I think getting that production well, which will also take a year or 2 in licensing and everything else, might be a shorter time period that we control. And it's more of a you're now suggesting 2028, 2029, if we're lucky to get the Gold Creek Dam Reservoir up and running. So maybe that production well and getting the third one up and operational might be the way to go.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, just curious, you're mentioning that our reservoir is now about 5 feet below where it was. I think in the summer it was 6 feet. So we're making a little bit of progress. With the water restrictions that are in place right now, are you seeing a reduction in water usage, or is it sort of on average what's been used in the past?
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor. What we're noticing, it's the typical seasonal deviations in flow. Every winter is our low flow time of the year. So it's those summer months where we really get the hammer down on us. So yeah, so there's no really big change that we've really identified.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, certainly, you know, we're recognizing that this isn't just a city of Cranbrook problem. This is a North American problem, really. And certainly we're seeing BC and Alberta, you know, the impacts. What I'm hearing, you know, from and reading, a lot of municipalities, they're thinking of starting at stage 3 and stage 4, right? Starting the year out, you know, so everybody's used to it. And, you know, so you can see that it's a crisis, really. And you know, once you get that damaged water supply, it could be an ongoing crisis, you know, when we're talking about the ecosystem once it's damaged. I would assume whenever we see crisis, you know, that the senior levels of government all of a sudden change their funding strategies for grants and stuff. Any indication that the province or the feds are looking at, I mean, they know where the problem is. They know this is, it's going to be a crisis. Are they getting out in front of this? Are you hearing anything about funding? I guess, and I'd put it back to Councillor Graham as well. Any discussion at this, the UBCM, to pressure the government for funding for, again, for, you know, increasing the scope of our reservoir as well as speeding up the process? Yeah. I guess here first, and then Councillor Graham comment on
certainly,
UBCM.
Mayor Price and Council. We aren't hearing that. We do know that things do take time at those higher levels of government to look at funding streams, and you know, streams that were announced a couple of years ago are still having a backlog of decisions being made. So we're not overly optimistic of things changing from that direction, but that's where we would certainly be looking to work hand in hand with council and any other partners that the city can find to hopefully speed up some of that change and make the best business case we can.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I know that the UBCM does have a task force engaged with the province on funding models and looking at infrastructure funding specifically, and different ways of financing that we aren't as handcuffed. And there will be significant work on that file over this year, and hopefully going to the government in the fall. So there is definitely some talks, like it's the most action I've seen in a while around local government financing and ways that we can access funds on a more consistent base, because right now with our current grant funding models, it's municipality competing against municipality, and even then it's drips and drabs of grants coming out. You know, you hear one a month kind of a thing. And then you look at our half grant application, there's 540 communities that have applied, and what do we got, like 6 get awarded so far. So it's one of those things that really affects our budget process, as well as the state of construction and building. How long do you wait? Because, you know, the dam right now, 15 million, and in 2 years, it could be 19 or 22 million. So, and there's only one taxpayer.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for that. Excuse me. We're into correspondence now. We have a few pieces of correspondence on the agenda tonight. The first item is regarding, sorry, the safety railings. Oh, got that twice here, sorry. So the correspondence, we got correspondence on it. For safety railings, and we'll receive it for information. Excuse me. The next piece of correspondence is from Spirit of the Rockies Festival regarding the use of. Here I go. Give me 1 minute, please. Much talking tonight. Regarding the use of Western Financial Place from June 13th to June 16th. Trevor's here to respond to any questions from council. And I have a potential motion here in approving this request, because there's 2 ways you could be looking at the dollars involved in this request. Would you like to speak to that, Trevor? Have you got the numbers there, or a breakdown of what we're looking for is a breakdown, so we're really clear on what the numbers in the motion mean.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. So the letter speaks to Spirit of the Rockies Fest hosting a 2-day concert with a 1-day setup and a 1-day teardown. So Thursday to Sunday. So per our fees and charges bylaw, rec and culture fees and charges bylaw, the Thursday rent would be $1,656. The Friday rent would be $6,220, or 10% of the gross ticket sales, whichever is greater. Saturday rent would be the same, $6,220, or 10% of the ticket sales. And Sunday rent would be this $1,656. So assuming that the ticket sales aren't astronomical, the rental costs that Spirit of the Rockies Fest is asking to be waived is $15,752.
And then hard costs. Have we got anything on the hard costs?
So hard costs are tough to determine without having actual ticket numbers of patrons, et cetera. But generally, like taking down the glass, taking out the boards where the exits are, setting up the stage, the barricade, security, janitorial, any ancillary rentals that they might need. So conversion is in our bylaw at $1,919.15. The stage is the same cost, $19.15. Barricade is $538.45. Chairs are rented at just over $1. Power is per amp, $1 fee per amp requested for the production. Electrician is based on a call out, whether it's during the day or after hours and on weekends. The costs are variable there. Janitorial estimating at, a couple $1,000 with, 4 cleaners per day, 8 hours for each one. Security, it's tough to estimate. So I am working with Spirit of the Rockies Fest to get these details, get their plan in place so that we can, minimize the hard costs. But I have a number that's around $10,000, but it could be upwards of $15,000 or $20,000, depending on, ticket sales and what the actual design of the show is.
Thanks for that clarity. I'll go to a motion that council receive the correspondence from Missy Bazange, Spirit of the Rocky Society dated January 18th, 2024, regarding the request for donation of rental fees for use of Western Financial Place, and approve the request for donation of the rental fees from Thursday, June 13th, 2024 through Sunday, June 16th, 2024, with the Spirit of the Rockies Society paying any hard costs that are related to the rental and use of the facility for the event. Can I get a mover, please? If you want to discuss it, I'll need a mover.
Sorry, Mayor, can you just read the last sentence of that?
Yeah. And approve the request for donation of the rental fees from Thursday, June 13th, 2024 to Sunday, June 16th, 2024, with the Spirit of Rockies Society paying any hard costs related to the rental and use of the facility.
Okay.
So the number that he first put out, those were soft costs. And then all those extra activities talked about after, those would be hard costs that they're responsible for.
Okay.
Can I get a mover? Councillor Ray, Councillor Peabody, discussion, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions I have. I don't know if you can even answer this because you're not the Rockies, Spirit of the Rockies spokesperson, but I'm just curious why they wouldn't use the curling rink, or is that not available at that time? You can get 700 to 1,000 people in there. That's probably all you're going to get for this, and it would be substantially cheaper. Just curious if you know why they wouldn't look at that facility. Okay, that's fine. And I look at the costs of it, and when they had, this would be before your time, but when I guess that would have been the Sam Steele Society brought in Smash Mouth. Did we waive anything? I'm trying to remember if we waived any fee, or did they just rent Western Financial for the cost? Like, is this the first time we've done this for either Sam Steele or Spirit of the Rockies, where we've waived soft costs of the arena? Do you know?
Got any historians here? No. Councillor Ray has a question.
So Trevor, maybe you can talk us through this a little bit. I remember when the previous letter came in asking to use the arena, I think you said, yeah, you kind of set aside, you sort of reserve city facilities during this weekend in case they're needed. So given that, are we foregoing any revenue? I'm taking it that you weren't planning to book the facility for another paying customer during this time? Like, just trying to get a sense of, are we losing potential revenue from somebody else, or is it kind of revenue neutral? Like, was it going to be empty anyways?
Councillor Ray through Mayor Price. So the city has an understanding, I believe there's a long-standing agreement or a letter of understanding with the society that all city facilities are blanket booked for that weekend for the society. So we wouldn't even have thought about anything different.
So my follow-up to that is, like, we're not losing revenue from another paying customer in terms of if we were to waive the rental fees.
Mayor Price through to Councilor Ray. So I guess last year and the previous year, the local organization ran a concert in there and they did pay fees. So yes and no, I suppose.
I have Councilor Brissette, then we'll go back to Councilor Graham.
So one thing, I do remember being in the curling arena for a concert there, and it was well attended and a good production. The one thing I would be concerned about is, do we know what kind of show this is? Are they going to bring in the numbers to fill Western Financial Place? Because if it's just a few people, it looks really lame. And it would be better, in my mind, to be in a venue that is the appropriate size for the event versus a really large facility that is mostly empty. So at this point, I would rather get some more information on it, just because I do think there is something to that. And then it may be a more reasonable cost to be in the curling facility as well.
Thank you. Back to Councilor Graham.
Yeah, and I just, like, with the comments and the questions that Councilor Ray asked, like, I think it's more of like a non-compete, because if they're going to do an outside show, we wouldn't do an inside or something, wouldn't let somebody kind of compete with them. But I wonder if, like, again, another idea, I agree with Councilor Brissette as well. Like, it's a massive facility. And if the lineup isn't there, which I'm not sure if it would be with your costs of the arena rental already there, you know, maybe this is another option would be the memorial. This could be a good kickoff, you know, kick out the scaffolding and let's party the memorial, you know, kind of a welcome back. So I don't know. I just think personally, I'm not comfortable with waiving the fee. I think that there's other venues that could be used and much rather be shoulder to shoulder than, you know, 6 feet apart.
So I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding on some of these questions and concerns that we have here. So I'm wondering, rather than just take it upon ourselves to defeat this motion, could we defer this and maybe have somebody have a delegation come before council and we can get our questions answered? You know, I just don't think, I get a sense council's not comfortable. We got enough information, you know, from that group to make a real good decision. Councilor Graham?
I don't know if we necessarily need a delegation, but maybe if Trevor's kind of captured our kind of questioning, you know, maybe the rationale is there and they want to use it, but it just, maybe you can reach out to them. I don't know if we need a full delegation or not, but I think staff might be able to just communicate, hey, here's some points that council brought up. Have you thought about this?
Councilor Stetson and Councilor Peabody.
Yeah, I was just going to support a motion to defer. More information needed.
Thank you, Mayor. I know last year they had that KISS cover band, I think called Destroyer. And was it empty? Okay. That's my question here is, like, this is a for-profit event and if they're making money on it, I don't see any reason why the city shouldn't also make money for having a facility that can host it.
Thank you. So we can make a motion to defer that will override this. Yeah, so Councilor Stetsky, you making a motion to defer? Okay, can I get a seconder? Councilor Graham. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Next item up is from Columbia Basin Institute of Regional History regarding a request to renew historic interpretation sign. Jason's available to provide additional information on this. If we have a potential motion that council receive the correspondence and direct staff to work with the Columbia Basin Institution of Regional History on this request. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor Graham, Councilor Stetsky, discussion. Everybody fine if we have staff work on this? You're good? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. More work for you, Jason. The next letter is from Mario Scodello regarding resident concerns, item to be received for information. Everybody's good with that? I'll be meeting, I think, with Mario tomorrow, so on some of his issues. 12:06. Next up, a letter from the Minister of Housing regarding the Emergency Weather Response Program. Item received for information, that was a response, that one we sent out a couple of weeks ago, so. Received for information. Final item tonight is a letter from Cranbrook Curling Center regarding the request for financial support for the 2024 Master Curling Championship. I'll read a motion out there, a potential motion. That council receive the correspondence from Lynn Lee, Chair of the 2024 Masters Curling Championship, Cranbrook Curling Center, and further approve a donation in the amount of $500. Sources of funds is council contingency. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. Councillor Peabody.
I'm just curious, will we be listed as a sponsor for the event?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is kind of past practice as well. We've done this numerous times. So no further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. That brings us now to updates and inquiries from council members. Where did we start? I'll start with Councillor Graham tonight.
Perfect, thank you. So just a couple things to highlight actually in the week coming is the UBCM is having their housing forum on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and it's talking about the new regulations that the province is introduced for municipalities and local governments throughout the province. So we are having an engagement session around that. I'm going to be chairing, and on the tip and tail of it, is going to be short-term rentals. Just talking a little bit about that and how that's rolling out, as well as Bill 45 on the encampment legislation. So I'm going to be chairing the encampment one, which is interesting since I'm on the committee for homelessness here. So that'll be good. And then I'm also going to be chairing a thing on housing and local government finance. So pertaining to our conversation a bit earlier, it should be a good session, and hopefully we can see some things happen and have the province share their insight into where they're wanting to go.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've said enough tonight.
Councillor Ray.
I had the pleasure of attending the most recent chamber networking event up at the College of the Rockies with Ella's doing an amazing job of catering, and a very interesting talk, including a mobile sauna service that we have in our area that sounds like that's pretty neat to check out. I also attended the grand opening of Ignite Health, a new fitness facility on the Strip. And we have amazing offerings in our community from entrepreneurs in yoga, fitness, health, and Ignite Health is the newest addition there, with many female entrepreneurs leading the way there. So that was great to see. And also shout out to our Culture and Recreation Department. I was so impressed to see the request for proposals for local registered charities to operate the 50/50 at the Rock the Kootenays Festival in August. I just thought that was a great example of transparency and exactly what we want to be about. So kudos to everyone for leading the way on that.
Thank you. Councillor Brissette.
Oh, thank you. Well, the mayor and I are both on the Housing Task Force, and I mentioned to the group that we would report back to council on those meetings and to the public about what's going on. We have really was just an introductory meeting to start, and a really good group of people. One person from the private sector, everybody else is government, which you can kind of understand because it is during the day and a little bit tough for people to give up, for private businesses to give up time when they could be making money to help with this, but there is some input that way. And we could certainly reach out for more input as time goes on. So anyways, we'll be meeting every couple of weeks and, you know, we'll report to you on what we, you know, decide or some of the discussion that happens during those meetings at council meetings. I also want to say congratulations to India Sherratt, who won gold at the World Cup last week in Italy for skier cross. And for people who aren't involved in ski racing, you go, oh yeah, that's great. But honestly, it's huge. And she also came back after injuries to do that. And I mean, it's a huge achievement. And to have, you know, the problem with ski racing is it's such a long, like, I know no pun intended, but a long run sport. You have to do it, work at it for years before you see the fruits of your labors. And so she's 27 years old. She's won a gold. She had won bronze about 3 years before, but had injuries in between. So, and her mom used to work for the city. So, and she's been part of the financial support team all along. So congratulations to the Sherratt family. That's a huge achievement. And we might, you know, include her in, you know, the celebrity Cranbrook people that we have featured at Western Financial Place and that. So maybe we could get in touch with her family on that.
Very good. Councillor Peabody.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. One, between now and our next council meeting is Valentine's Day. And I know if you've been in a relationship for a while, you're wondering what you can do to make it memorable and special. So I have two suggestions for you. One is a play that's on at the studio stage door called Here on the Flight Path. And I know the CAO and the mayor attended the opening night as well. It is hilarious. So if you would like to invest a little bit of money, the show is running from the 8th to the 11th and the 14th to the 17th. Well worth it. It's one of the funniest productions I've seen in a long time. The other one is at Key City Theatre on February 24th, and that's the spring concert for the Symphony of the Kootenay, focusing on Broadway musicals and themes from those. There will be, of course, local involvement by Mount Baker Secondary and Selkirk Secondary out of Kimberley as well. So all of these are likely to be sellout, so I would encourage you to go buy your tickets tomorrow and have a memorable Valentine's Day. Secondly, I'm going to be away until the next council meeting pretty much, and so I had the pleasure of meeting with the consultants that are working on our recreation and culture. It's both recreation and culture surveys going forward. I guess for me, a couple of points. One, I really think that around recreation, we should be planning our developments in our community in the future with the trail systems and community meeting spaces designed first, and then fit in the development around it so that we can make sure that in future we are well-connected community by trail systems. Second one was around culture, and I've always believed that it's the addition of arts and culture that turns a community to live in into a livable community. So if you care about recreation and you care about culture, please do participate in the survey. It's a public survey, and we want to get as much input as possible from the people of Cranbrook.
Thank you very much. And yeah, a couple things. Yeah, husbands out there, do yourselves a favor and take your wife to Flight Path. It's a good one. It really is. It was fantastic. You know, a two-person play, and one lady plays 3 different parts. And I'm going to tell you, boy, they got the perspective nailed down on that one. Anyways, and again, on India, I didn't realize she did. I've been kind of following her over the years. I really thought that she was done. That young woman has had so many serious injuries. I mean, she's had, I think, both knees rebuilt. I don't know how many times. She's got to be so tough. And I remember talking to her mom, the last real serious injury she had. She thought she's done, and she she's invested her life in this. She has. And then those injuries, and she was at the top. She was due, for one or two. She was one or two in the world. And then the injury. And, and knowing the family a little bit, just the psychological trauma that she went through. And I can't imagine. I mean, she's tougher than any guy I know to get back and win a gold. That's unbelievable. So good on you, India. And you know what? We'll get you when you're back into town in front of council here for sure. Real quick, last week we had the inaugural meetings of the Housing Task Force, as Councillor Blissett had mentioned on Tuesday. Again, I thought it was a good meeting. Task Force for the Homelessness was last Wednesday. Two pretty diverse groups, but certainly first meetings were introductions, expectations, and terms of reference. So we got through that. I see we got timelines. We have very good facilitation. I mean, it couldn't be better on both these groups. Everybody in the room is very professional. We're going to go from A to Z on this stuff. People in the room, with I think even their philosophical beliefs and their values and principles to go from here to here on some of these issues. So I'm hoping we'll come up with some really good decisions. Certainly, I don't think much can be overlooked with the talent that we have on there. And thank you for everybody that stepped up and has agreed to sit on the task force. As you know, task force has got a set mandate, set terms of reference, and coming out with working goals at the end of the day. And we have time limitations on it to roll it out. So that's high priority of this. I believe the one task force is shooting for end of July at the outset, and the other one in September. So we should see some good things coming. I think we may even see projects as we're rolling through this come to fruition as these meetings are ongoing. Yeah, so we'll have updates from the public. Our media people are going to be having dedicated updates on our website. There's dedicated spots on our webpage, and it'll the week after. So that's an off week from council. So we have council today, and you probably will see the updates by Wednesday the following week. So everybody, and of course, council will see those before they go public. So yeah, that's all I have for tonight. And with that, I'll ask for adjournment. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Peabody, all in favor?